Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Shuster. With 10 days to go in this presidential election, let's start with the action on the campaign trail. Both John McCain and Barack Obama are in the Southwest today. In Nevada, frontrunner Obama hammered away at his opponent, saying the McCain campaign is now just grasping at straws.
Which means they can't buy new equipment. He's called me a socialist for suggesting that we focus on tax cuts not for corporations and the wealthy, but for the middle class. Then, the other day, he took it to a whole new level. He said that I was, get this, like George W. Bush. You can't make this stuff up.
Meanwhile, John McCain is also spending time in the Southwest. He's holding 2 rallies in New Mexico today, focusing on the economy and blasting his opponent's policies as dangerously misguided.
Senator Obama says he's going to try to soak the rich, but it's the middle class who are going to get put through the ringer. Because a lot of his promised tax increases misses the target. To pay for nearly $1 trillion in new government spending, his tax increase would impact 50% of small business income in this country and the jobs of 16 million middle-class Americans who work for those small businesses.
Sarah Palin is in Iowa today, where she and John McCain are working to try to make up some ground in these last days. Palin held a big rally in Sioux City before heading to Des Moines, and she made light of the recent headlines on her $150,000 clothing budget.
It's nice and crisp, getting off the airplane and coming into it reminded me a lot of Alaska, so I put my warm jacket on, and it's my own jacket. It doesn't belong to anybody else.
Meantime, Joe Biden was in Battleground, Virginia today for a rally in the town of Suffolk. The vice presidential nominee continued to hammer away at John McCain for focusing on a tax rather than economic policy. And then he dropped this holiday-themed jab.
Folks, look, I know Halloween's coming. But John McCain, dressed as an agent of change, is one costume the American people ain't gonna look at.
Those Halloween references we got to put a stop to that. Anyway, Craig Crawford is an MSNBC political analyst and columnist with CQPolitics.com. Craig, our friend Howard Morton outlined just how bad Halloween references are going back for the last 20 years. But why do candidates still keep going back to that well?
Oh, whenever you see the pumpkins come out, you know the Halloween references are coming. And after all, Halloween's just before Election Day. I don't know which one's scarier for some people.
Well, here's the response from the McCain campaign as far as Sarah Palin. Again, there was a big story in Politico today that Governor Palin is going rogue, that she is really angry at her handlers and is not going to be listening to them and has not been listening to them. And in fact, CNN is now suggesting that there's a McCain staffer who's describing Sarah Palin on the record, but without identifying themselves, is describing her as a diva. Well, here's what the McCain campaign put out officially. It says, unnamed sources with their own agenda will say what they want, but from Governor Palin on down, we have one agenda, and that is to win on Election Day. Craig, what do you make of all of this?
Well, Sarah Palin is on the bridge to nowhere unless she figures something out after this campaign if her ticket loses, because we haven't seen an introduction, a first impression this bad since Dan Quayle, who never really recovered from it, although I think she's got better political skills than Quayle.
Who's to blame? I mean, is it the staff or the way they sort of handled the rollout by not letting her have news conferences, or is it Sarah Palin herself for not being prepared and perhaps not being up to the job?
I think it goes back to before the convention, when they were considering her, before McCain picked her. We learned how little vetting they did. And it wasn't so much that the things they would have found would have prevented him from picking her necessarily, but they were unprepared with a response to some of the questions that came up so quickly after she was picked and gave that speech at the convention that was very successful. They weren't ready with a response. They were getting getting hit with a lot of information they hadn't heard before and having to publicly respond to it. So that kind of set a tone right there of a campaign that did not know how to manage the news about their running mate.
Craig, are we already seeing the knives coming out, essentially? I mean, I guess this happens with every sort of campaign that's in trouble, but usually it happens after Election Day. But, I mean, look, have Republicans associated with this campaign and sort of observing it and giving money to it, I mean, are they out for blood at this point?
I think a lot of them have been resigned for some time. I talked to a group out in Colorado last week of all Republicans and wealthy ones, as a matter of fact, in the meat industry. And at the end of my talk with them, when they sort of ran out of questions, and I said, "You guys seem really depressed," and they all started laughing because they are. I think it's more a case of resignation from a lot of Republicans that they just can't figure this one out and are beginning to think about the next round. And I heard a lot about Mitt Romney from that crowd. So I think Mitt Romney, Sarah Palin, Huckabee, a lot of those faces are going to come back on the scene if McCain loses this race. And it's going to be one of the fascinating political stories to see how the Republican Party rebuilds itself. And that's going to depend a lot on how well Obama does in his first months as president if he's elected.
What about Sarah Palin, though? I mean, under this scenario, and again, of course, the race is not over, and 10 days is an eternity, but clearly, I mean, when 34% of independents say that they are less likely to vote for John McCain because of Sarah Palin, that's a big problem that she has, not just in this election, but also in terms of her political future. How does she try to turn that around if she is to have a political future?
I think after this campaign, if they lose this race, she needs to begin to show some chops on some of the big issues in Washington. And, you know, they gave the speech this week about child care, I mean, those kinds of things, and not get too heavily into the light, fluffy, Hollywood-type interview settings, which would just further diminish her image. She needs to show some real substance so that she's got what it takes to be on the national stage and talk about issues intelligently and in ways that people can understand, which is her strength. But also, we need to know that she understands as well as making others understand.
Craig Crawford, MSNBC analyst. And Craig, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.